procedures for how we make things work. We have 23 members from the US, 17 members from Europe, 18 members from the Asia Pacific. So we actually rotate our meetings to be in the US, in Asia, and in Europe on a regular basis, 3 times a year. Being in the ICC means that you get to participate in the ongoing development of the profile format specification, but more importantly, you get direct access to all the companies that are actually making the stuff that you buy to work with color. And that, to me, is like the key value to the ICC, both for users, for the users that are in the ICC, as well as for the vendors that are working within the ICC itself. So there are 58 members from all over. We do we do standardization work. We've helped publish the ISO 15076, which is the ICC V4 spec, through Joint Working Group 7 at ISO TC 130. We've published the Black Point compensation spec, ISO 18619, and we're currently working on a brand new spec that you'll hear about later on today, ICC Max, that addresses some new key issues in packaging and in the graphic arts, as well as medical imaging. So all these are active areas of investigation that we're working on in order to solve problems that actually matter to people. So today, boy, you know, last night Vinod said that when you come to India, you got to be like powerful and perky. So I guess I got to copy the presenter from last night's dinner. So at today's conference, the business of color management is the first thing that we're going to talk about. First, we have Steve Smiley talking about standards for specifying print. We have Greg Winstow from QuadTech talking about the ROI of automating color management on press for packaging systems, and Pancham Kumar from EFI talking about color tools for customer success. The first bit, including what I just talked about earlier, is all about why you should use color management. Why does it matter to your business? Because if you can't answer that question, that is the first question that you should be answering before getting any technology whatsoever. So once you figure out why you're going to do it, then you need to figure out how you're going to implement your color management. So Bob Hallam is going to talk about the process of managing color from the capture through digital camera means to all the way up to the consumer, all the challenges in that workflow. Katsuji Kondo-san is going to talk about color management in digital printing and how you can use that to meet industry standards. And Eli Khoury is going to talk about how you can use standardized workflows in commercial and packaging printing in order to print in a way that allows you to meet the expectations of print buyers, for example, for export markets, where the only way that where you're working at sort of an arm's length, so the way you work is through standards. That allows people to communicate and do purchase and creation of print in such a way that everybody is happy. And then last gentleman from HP will talk about how you simplify color using on-press color management. In the third section, we're going to start talking about some real-world applications of color management. We have Rob Meyer flying all the way in from Holland, from the Netherlands, to talk about some of the experiences of Drukkerij Roelofs in using color management to do their business. Tarun Chopra is going to talk about standardization in print and application of ICC profiles in their business. And Sundar Muthu is going to talk about how important getting color consistency is for brand owners, for a CPC. Chris Bai is going to talk about some of his experiences as BenQ in having recently joined the ICC. Not that that's a plug to all of you to join the ICC or at all. And Dr. Abe Sharma is our other guest is going to talk about color management and instruments and how some of the new standards in measurement are going to affect what you do. Lastly, we're going to round up the day with B.S. Kampani talking about emerging trends and issues in packaging. Jürgen Seitz is going to talk about GCR. And RP Lakshmi Venkataraman is going to talk about their experiences at the Hindu. Sushil is going to talk about their experiences at the Malayala Manorama. And Snehisis Chandaroy is going to talk about their experiences as well. I'm looking forward to hearing all of those and the talk from Nilay and from Prashant at Times of India, because I think hearing the stories of others that are using color management is both instructive and inspiring, and it helps us to avoid the pitfalls. So, and lastly, Max Durhak is going to talk about where ICC is going next with ICC Max. So that's the order of the day. Why, how, what. As simple as that. And hopefully, by the end of the day, your view of color management is going to be as simple as that. That there's a high-level view of why you do it, how you do it, and what you should do. And the details come after that. The details will work themselves out, and hopefully today, if we listen to our speakers, we'll learn a lot of details about how you should do your color management. So I'd like to switch to our next slide, number 2. And our next speaker is Steve Smiley. If you could come up. Steve Smiley, I've known Steve for a long time. First, I should thank you for your attention. Steve, we've got quite a loaded, we've got quite a very jam-packed session today, so I'm going to speak very, very briefly on the speakers and ask you to read their bios. But Steve in particular has been around the industry a long time. I'm not saying you're old or anything like that, but Steve has been very instrumental working both in the packaging industry and working in commercial offset, standards formation, and flexo and packaging standards formations. And Steve is going to talk to us about how we can use standardization in order to do our print, why it's important, and how one uses color management to help you hit your standards. So Steve?
Thanks, William. Good morning. Thank you all for coming. And I did want to thank NPES and IPAMA for inviting us and letting us do this presentation and share with you what we do. One more thing I was going to add, and I know there's some newspaper people in here, is I did spend about 5 years working in a newspaper and trying to manage color in a newspaper back before we had ICC technology, or before we had things that really fit quite right in ICC technology. Today what I'm going to try and do is talk about the solutions to align your supply chain from customers' expectations all the way through what they get when the finished product is delivered. I'm going to walk through a lot of the details and standards that if we don't include, we come back and say, well, this didn't work, that didn't work. There's a lot of little pieces that need to put in there. They're not that significant of a purchase, but they are critical to come in and get consistency through the supply chain. William alluded to this a little bit, but as a member of ICC, ISO, CGAT, SNAP, Grackle Swap, the Ghent Work Group, the FTA, what we've all done is we've worked together. So several of the ICC members are very involved with ISO. So when we have a project that needs to be aligned, we really work together as an industry. The Ghent Work Group writes things, passes them up to ISO. One of the things I'm going to talk about today is in CXF, color exchange format. That was started at the Ghent Work Group, went to ICC. ICC said use this format. We took it to ISO, and we made all these pieces fit. So we've tried to simplify it to where instead of each group saying do it this way, do it that way, we're really pretty well aligned as an industry. So I'm going to walk through a group of standards. All of these standards really kind of come in and point and help align what we do in ICC workflows. We'll start at the very beginning. How do we view color? What do we look at? The standard, the older standard used to be 5000K. The new standard is D50. D50 and the way it's defined in ISO 3664-2009 has some fluorescence in the light source. Because when we're in a store, we typically have a little bit of sunlight coming in. There's fluorescence in the lighting we use, maybe not in our yellow lights at home, but in many viewing conditions. And if we don't look at it in the view booth correctly, we're not going to see it on the shelf correctly. A lot of people ask, why do you even care that we use this when we're going to view it at home? Because printers, there is no standard home light, and printers need some kind of aim point that we can look at and say, yes, it's accurate. We're going to use our instruments, but we still use our eyes, and if we have the wrong lights, I've watched many printers that did not use the correct lights sit there with a proof, adjust the press, and make it to where it was incorrect in the right lighting, and then our customers weren't satisfied. So viewing condition is one of the top things I do. I take a meter out anytime I'm on a press run, and I check the lamp for the right color temperature and to make sure it has the right amount of fluorescence in it. I love doing this story. When I teach the consumer products companies, I have them all draw spectral curves before we're done. But let's just say we like that blue, and this is D50 aluminum. So the light that comes in has all those colors in it, so it can reflect that. If we took a blue card and a blue light and turned it on, the card would look blue. But if we were in a red light with that blue card, it would turn black. So we're in the correct viewing condition. We see this color, we've got white light coming in, the blue gets reflected. When I change to a different viewing condition, blue color can't show up because there's no light to reflect off of it. So the blue becomes very gray when I go into a yellow lighted room. Same thing in cool white fluorescence that we have in a lot of our businesses. That blue may be there, but the blue right next to it's going to turn gray. It's critical for brand management and not to leave stuff sitting on the shelves that we use the correct lighting. I just have 3 things in my hand. To see color, you've got to have a light source, you've got to have an object, and you've got to have a receiver. It's pretty simple. If somebody asks me what color the trees are in the forest when nobody's there, well, there's not a color because there's no receiver. So we only can see color because of the way our eyes perceive it. And frankly, we probably all perceive it different. So we use instruments. But let's go back to our eyes for a second. This is the simplest thing that you can do, and I would recommend everybody that has anything to do with the printing industry go to this website or type in FM100 hue tester and take that test. It's got 100 colors in it. You align them to make sure that they're correct, and you understand better how you see color. It's so critical for, I've worked with many press operators, and most of the people in management and printing facility don't see color well. As I've done this with large groups of people where people handled a tomato product line and somebody handled a green product line, we gave them the test. We realized that the guys doing the red work didn't really have good discretion in the reds, and the green guys didn't have good discretion in the green, so we swapped them out. It's just understanding what you can see. As we get older, our eyes change, medications make our eyes change. It's good to know what you see and how you see things, or else you start trying to fix things that aren't broke. Measurement devices are defined by ISO 13655, and Abhay's going to go through this a little bit more, but all of our old instruments we had prior to 2009, if you took 4 spectrophotometers, we wrote our standards in ISO to put huge tolerances on things because the devices didn't measure the same. The old standard allowed you to use any light source that you wanted in your measurement instrument. The new standard, it's very well defined as to what that light source needs to be, and in my opinion, if we move to, wrong device. When we move to M1, we're using the same light source in our instrument that we're viewing things with, and it made color management and ICC profiles work so much better than we ever have before. So before we used a flashlight lamp and then went to a view booth and we took the LAB values from both, and it didn't quite fit quite right. So some of the errors we saw in color management came from having this older style system. The new devices still have the MO mode, but it's much tighter than it was prior to 2009, and I would recommend that anybody in one of my customers' supply chain needs to put the new devices in place. File formats. You guys use PDFs for how you transfer files? PDF users? Okay. The packaging industry in the US, they insist on passing Illustrator files, and then they complain because we're not getting good brand consistency. Well, you're not communicating in an Illustrator file what my expectations are. PDFX requires that you have an output intent profile in it. It lets me communicate with anybody, anywhere in the world, what my expectations are. It also gives you the characteristics that you should be able to print it to. Do you need to color manage it? Can you use dot gain curves? Can you do it with G